Sarah Martinez had always believed that moving to the quiet suburbs of Cedar Falls would bring the peace she desperately needed. After years of working as a trauma nurse in downtown hospitals, dealing with violence and chaos daily, she craved the simple life. The small house on Maple Street seemed perfect. White picket fence, friendly neighbors, and a sense of safety she hadn't felt in years. What Sarah didn't know was that her next-door neighbor, Marcus Thompson, was not just another suburban dad tending to his garden every morning. Behind his calm demeanor and warm smile lay the disciplined mind of a retired Navy SEAL who had served 3 tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. Marcus had seen enough violence for several lifetimes and had chosen this quiet neighborhood specifically to escape those memories. The first signs of trouble began on a humid Tuesday evening in July. Sarah was watering her roses when she noticed 3 men standing across the street, their eyes fixed on her house. They weren't from the neighborhood. She knew every face on Maple Street by now. These men had a different energy about them, something that made her nursing instincts kick in, the same feeling she got when a patient was hiding something dangerous. Marcus noticed them too. From his kitchen window, he watched as the men lingered longer than casual visitors would. His military training never fully switched off, and something about their posture, the way they kept looking at Sarah's house, triggered his protective instincts. He made a mental note to keep an eye on things. The harassment started small. Sarah's garbage cans were knocked over repeatedly. Her morning newspaper disappeared. Someone had been walking through her garden at night, leaving muddy footprints among her carefully tended flowers. She reported these incidents to the local police, but Officer Jenkins just shrugged and suggested it might be neighborhood kids playing pranks. Sarah's life began to change in ways she couldn't ignore. Phone calls with no one on the other end came at all hours. Her car tires were slashed twice in 1 week. Strange men would drive slowly past her house, sometimes stopping to take pictures. She installed security cameras, but they were mysteriously damaged or repositioned to face the wrong direction. The situation escalated when Sarah discovered the real reason behind the harassment. Her ex-husband, David Martinez, whom she had divorced 3 years earlier after discovering his involvement with a drug trafficking operation, had been released from prison early for good behavior. The 3 men she had seen were his associates, and they wanted something David had hidden before his arrest, something they believed Sarah knew about. David had never told Sarah about the money. During their marriage, she had noticed his expensive purchases and late-night phone calls, but she had been too focused on her nursing career to investigate. When the FBI raided their home and arrested David, Sarah learned the truth about the man she had married. The divorce was swift and bitter, with David claiming she had somehow betrayed him to the authorities. Now, 3 years later, David's criminal associates believed Sarah was hiding $2 million in cash that David had stolen from their operation before his arrest. They were wrong, but they wouldn't believe her denials. The harassment was their way of pressuring her to reveal the location of money she knew nothing about. Marcus began to notice changes in his neighbor's behavior. Sarah, who had always been cheerful and talkative during their brief morning conversations over the fence, became withdrawn and nervous. She installed multiple locks on her doors and rarely left her house except for work. Her usual gardening routine stopped entirely, and he could see she wasn't sleeping. Her light stayed on all night. One evening, as Marcus was returning from his weekly grocery shopping, he saw Sarah hurrying from her car to her front door, constantly looking over her shoulder. She dropped her keys twice before managing to get inside. That's when he decided to introduce himself properly and offer help. "Sarah," he called out the next morning as she was leaving for work. "Is everything okay? I couldn't help but notice you seem worried about something." Sarah hesitated. She had grown to trust Marcus during their casual conversations, but she didn't want to burden anyone else with her problems. However, something in his calm, confident manner made her feel safe enough to share part of the truth. "I think someone has been watching my house," she admitted. "Strange things have been happening, and I'm not sure what to do about it." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Have you talked to the police?" "They think it's just kids causing trouble," Sarah said, her frustration evident. "But this feels different. More serious. Would you like me to keep an eye on things?" Marcus offered. "I work from home most days, and I'm usually up early anyway." Sarah felt a wave of relief. Having someone she trusted watching out for her made the situation feel less overwhelming. She accepted his offer gratefully, not knowing that Marcus's version of keeping an eye on things involved skills far beyond those of an average neighbor. That night, Marcus positioned himself at his bedroom window with a pair of military-grade binoculars. His training had taught him patience, and he settled in for what might be a long watch. Around midnight, his vigilance was rewarded. A dark sedan pulled up slowly across the street from Sarah's house. Two men got out and began walking around her property, testing windows and doors. Marcus watched as they tried to disable Sarah's security cameras and attempted to find a way inside. He considered calling the police, but years of military experience had taught him that sometimes immediate action was more effective than waiting for backup. Marcus slipped out his back door and moved through the shadows between houses, using skills he hadn't needed in civilian life. He positioned himself where he could observe the intruders without being seen. The men were clearly not random burglars. They moved with purpose and seemed to know the layout of Sarah's property. When one of the men produced lock-picking tools and began working on Sarah's back door, Marcus knew he had to act. He couldn't let them enter her house while she slept. Moving silently, he approached from behind and placed a firm hand on the shoulder of the man at the door. "I think you gentlemen are lost," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying an authority that made both men freeze. The second man spun around, reaching for something inside his jacket. Marcus's reflexes, honed by years of military training, were faster. In one fluid movement, he had disarmed the man and had both intruders on the ground, their arms secured behind their backs. "Now," Marcus said calmly, "why don't you tell me what you want with my neighbor?" The men refused to talk, but Marcus had ways of encouraging conversation that he had learned in much more dangerous places than suburban America. Within minutes, he had extracted enough information to understand that Sarah was in real danger. These men were part of a larger group, and they wouldn't give up easily. Marcus zip-tied the intruders to Sarah's back fence and called the police. When Officer Jenkins arrived, he seemed surprised by the professional manner in which the suspects had been detained. The men claimed they were just looking for a lost dog, but the lock-picking tools and the knife one of them had been carrying suggested otherwise. Sarah woke up to find police cars in her driveway and Marcus talking to the officers. When she learned what had happened, she felt both grateful and terrified. If these men were willing to break into her house, what would they try next? "We need to talk," Marcus told her after the police had taken the intruders away. "There's something bigger going on here, and you need to know what you're dealing with." Over coffee in Sarah's kitchen, Marcus shared his military background and his assessment of the situation. He explained that the men who had tried to break in were clearly part of an organized operation, not random criminals. Their equipment and methods suggested they had experience with this kind of work. "Sarah," Marcus said gently, "I think someone believes you have something they want. Something valuable enough to justify taking serious risks to get it." Sarah's face went pale as the pieces began falling into place. She told Marcus about David, the divorce, and the money his associates thought she was hiding. For the first time, she shared the full story of how her life had been turned upside down by learning the truth about her ex-husband. Marcus listened without judgment, his military mind already analyzing the tactical situation. Sarah was facing an enemy she didn't understand, with resources and determination that made them extremely dangerous. The attempted break-in was just the beginning. They would be back with better planning and more aggressive methods. "We need to assume they won't give up easily," Marcus explained. "These kinds of people don't accept no for an answer, especially when they believe millions of dollars are at stake." Sarah felt overwhelmed. She had no idea where David had hidden any money, and even if she did, she would never have access to it. How could she convince dangerous criminals of something she couldn't prove? Marcus saw the fear in her eyes and made a decision that would change both their lives. "Sarah, I want you to know that you're not alone in this. I've dealt with dangerous people before, and I won't let anything happen to you." His words carried a weight of conviction that Sarah found comforting. She didn't fully understand what Marcus meant by dealing with dangerous people, but something about his calm confidence made her believe he could handle whatever came next. As the first part of Sarah's ordeal came to an end, neither she nor Marcus realized how much more dangerous the situation was about to become. David's associates had patience and resources, and the failed break-in would only make them more determined. The quiet life Sarah had sought in Cedar Falls was about to be shattered completely, but she would soon discover that having a retired Navy SEAL as a neighbor was exactly what she needed to survive what was coming. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test Marcus's military skills and Sarah's courage in ways neither of them could have imagined. The real battle was just beginning. The next morning brought a false sense of calm to Maple Street. Sarah tried to maintain her normal routine, but every shadow seemed threatening. Every unfamiliar sound made her jump. Marcus had insisted on walking her to her car before she left for her shift at the hospital, and he was waiting when she returned that evening. "Any unusual activity while I was gone?" Sarah asked as she hurried from her car to her front door. Marcus shook his head, but his expression remained serious. "No, but that doesn't mean they've given up. People like this usually regroup and come back with a better plan." His assessment proved accurate sooner than expected. That night, Sarah's phone began ringing every hour on the hour. When she answered, a cold voice would deliver the same message. "We know you have what belongs to us. Make this easy on yourself." By the third call, Sarah was shaking. She called Marcus, who arrived at her door within minutes. He listened to the voicemails the callers had left, his expression growing darker with each threatening message. "They're escalating," he told her. "This is psychological warfare. They're trying to break you down before they make their next move." Marcus set up a recording device to capture future calls and showed Sarah how to activate a panic button he had given her. The small device would send an immediate alert to his phone if she pressed it. "Keep this with you at all times," he instructed. "If anything feels wrong, press it. Don't hesitate." The harassment campaign intensified over the following week. Sarah's workplace was called with false emergency reports, forcing her to leave work repeatedly. Her credit cards were mysteriously canceled. Dead flowers appeared on her doorstep every morning. Someone had been in her house while she was at work. Nothing was stolen, but furniture was slightly moved, pictures were tilted, and her personal items were rearranged in subtle but disturbing ways. Marcus increased his surveillance, using motion sensors and cameras from his military gear to monitor Sarah's property around the clock. He discovered that the intruders were more sophisticated than typical criminals. They knew how to avoid most security systems and moved with the discipline of trained professionals. On Thursday evening, Sarah received a different kind of call. The voice was familiar. It was David, calling from prison. "Sarah, baby, I need you to listen to me." David's voice was urgent. "These guys who are bothering you, they're not playing games. You need to give them what they want." "I don't have anything, David." Sarah's frustration boiled over. "I've told everyone that already. I never knew about your business, remember? That's why you're in prison, and I'm trying to rebuild my life." "The money is in the house, Sarah. I hid it before I got arrested. Check the basement wall behind the water heater. There's a loose brick. Give them the money, and this will all stop." The call ended abruptly, leaving Sarah staring at the phone in shock. David had hidden money in their house, the house she still lived in. All this time, she had been sitting on the evidence of her ex-husband's crimes without knowing it. Marcus found her in the basement 20 minutes later, pulling bricks away from the wall behind the water heater. Her hands were bleeding from the rough masonry, but she kept digging frantically. "Sarah, what are you doing?" She explained David's call, her words tumbling out between sobs of frustration and relief. Finally, she would be able to end this nightmare. She would give the money back and get her life back. Behind the 8th brick, Sarah's fingers found plastic. She pulled out a waterproof bag containing stacks of $100 bills. There was more, much more. By the time they finished removing all the hidden compartments David had created, they had recovered nearly $2 million in cash. "This is it," Sarah said, holding the money with trembling hands. "I can give this back, and they'll leave me alone." Marcus examined the bills carefully, his military training making him suspicious of simple solutions. "Sarah, I need you to think about this carefully. These people killed to get this money originally. David stole it from them, and they've been waiting 3 years to get it back. Do you really think they're just going to thank you politely and walk away?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're the only person who knows where David hid this money. You're a witness to their operation. Once they have the money back, what's to stop them from eliminating the loose end?" Sarah felt sick as the reality of her situation became clear. She couldn't give the money back because they would likely kill her to maintain their secrecy. But she couldn't keep it either because they would never stop hunting her. She was trapped. Marcus saw the despair in her eyes and made a decision that went against every instinct he had developed about avoiding trouble in civilian life. Sarah, there's another option. But it's going to require you to trust me completely. What kind of option? We make them come to us, on our terms, in a place where we have the advantage. Marcus explained his plan. Instead of waiting for the criminals to choose when and where to strike, they would force a confrontation under controlled conditions. Marcus would use his military skills to level the playing field and end the threat permanently. But that's dangerous, Sarah protested. These people are killers. Yes, they are, Marcus agreed. But so am I when I need to be. The difference is, I'm trying to protect innocent people instead of hurting them. Sarah spent the night considering Marcus's offer. She could take the money and run, try to disappear somewhere. But she knew they would eventually find her. She could go to the FBI, but that would mean months or years of being a target while the legal system slowly worked. Or she could trust the quiet man next door who had already proven he was willing to risk his life to protect her. The next morning, Sarah made her choice. What do you need me to do? Marcus smiled for the first time since this ordeal began. First, we're going to let them know exactly where the money is. But we're going to choose when and where they come to get it. Marcus spent the day preparing Sarah's house for what military tacticians call a fatal funnel, a tactical situation where the enemy is forced to enter a confined space that offers maximum advantage to the defender. He moved furniture to create sight lines and cover points, disabled certain light switches while ensuring others would provide tactical illumination, and set up multiple escape routes in case his plan failed. Sarah, tonight you're going to call them, Marcus explained. You're going to tell them you found the money, and you want to make a deal. Tell them you'll trade the money for a guarantee they'll leave you alone. Will they believe that? They'll want to believe it because they want the money. But, more importantly, they'll come here thinking they're dealing with a scared nurse who just wants this to end. They won't expect to face someone with my background. That evening, Sarah made the call. Her hands shook as she dialed the number that had been calling her for weeks. I found David's money, she said when the familiar voice answered. I want to make a deal. The voice on the phone became immediately interested. What kind of deal? I give you the money. You leave me alone forever. No more calls, no more harassment, no more threats. Where's the money now? In my house. All of it. $2 million, just like David said. There was a pause. Then, we'll be there tomorrow night at midnight. Have the money ready, and this will all be over. After Sarah hung up, Marcus began his final preparations. He had 16 hours to turn a suburban home into a tactical advantage. He would need every minute. Marcus called in favors from former military colleagues, not for backup, but for equipment. Body armor that fits Sarah, night vision goggles, and communications gear that would let them coordinate their actions. He also acquired something that made Sarah nervous, weapons that were definitely not legal for civilian ownership. Marcus, I'm not sure about this, Sarah said as she watched him test the scope on a rifle that looked like something from a war movie. Sarah, these people have already shown they're willing to use violence. Tomorrow night, they're coming here to kill you, whether you give them the money or not. The only question is whether we're going to be ready for them. Marcus explained the tactical reality of their situation. David's associates weren't coming to negotiate. They were coming to eliminate a witness. They would take the money and kill Sarah to ensure their security. The only way to survive was to strike first, and strike decisively. What if we're wrong? Sarah asked. What if they really will leave me alone if I give them the money? Then, tomorrow morning you'll be reading about my arrest in the newspaper, and I'll take full responsibility for everything that happens. But, if I'm right, tomorrow morning you'll be alive and free because we didn't wait to find out. Sarah understood the choice she was making. She was asking a man she barely knew to risk everything to save her life, and he was willing to do it. More than that, she was agreeing to participate in a plan that might involve killing other human beings, even if those people were trying to kill her. Teach me what I need to know, she said finally. Marcus spent the rest of the night training Sarah in basic tactical movements, communication signals, and the operation of the weapons she might need to use. She learned to move quietly, to use furniture and walls for cover, and to shoot accurately under stress. Her nursing background helped. She was used to functioning under pressure and had steady hands in crisis situations. As midnight approached on the following night, Marcus and Sarah took their positions. The money was displayed prominently on Sarah's dining room table, clearly visible through the front window. Marcus had positioned himself in the kitchen with a clear view of all the house's entrances, while Sarah waited upstairs with a radio and specific instructions about when to move and where to go. Remember, Marcus told her through their communication system, these people are coming here to hurt you. Whatever happens tonight, it's them or us. There's no middle ground. At 11:58 p.m., 2 cars pulled up outside Sarah's house. Marcus counted 6 men total, all armed, all moving with the coordination of a practice team. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here for war. Sarah, Marcus whispered into his microphone, it's time. Stay calm, follow the plan, and trust your training. The front door exploded inward as the first wave of attackers entered Sarah's house. They expected to find a frightened woman alone with a bag of money. Instead, they walked into a carefully planned military operation designed and executed by a man who had spent years perfecting the art of close-quarters combat. The battle for Sarah's life was about to begin. The moment the front door burst open, Marcus felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that had kept him alive through 3 combat tours. The tactical situation unfolded exactly as he had predicted. 2 men entered through the front, weapons drawn, scanning for threats, but focused on the money visible on the dining room table. They expected resistance from a terrified civilian, not from someone who had spent years fighting in places where hesitation meant death. Marcus had positioned himself behind the kitchen island with a clear sight line to the front entrance. The intruders moved into his kill zone without realizing they were already dead. His first shot took down the lead man instantly, a clean headshot that dropped him silently. The second attacker spun toward the muzzle flash, but Marcus was already moving to his next position. Contact front, Marcus whispered into his throat microphone, alerting Sarah that the engagement had begun. The second man fired wildly toward the kitchen, his shots splintering cabinet doors and shattering dishes. But Marcus was no longer there. Years of urban warfare had taught him that movement was life. He rolled behind the breakfast bar as return fire chewed through the space he had just occupied. Through his night vision goggles, Marcus could see 2 more attackers approaching the back door, while a 5th man remained outside as a lookout. The 6th man was moving toward the stairs, clearly intending to search for Sarah. Marcus had anticipated this tactical deployment and prepared accordingly. Sarah, crouched in the upstairs hallway exactly where Marcus had positioned her, could hear the gunfire below and fought to control her breathing. Her medical training helped her remain functional under extreme stress, but nothing in her nursing career had prepared her for actual combat. She gripped the pistol Marcus had given her, remembering his instructions. Point, breathe, squeeze. Don't overthink it. The man climbing the stairs moved cautiously, his weapon trained upward. He was experienced enough to know that corners and stairwells were dangerous places, but he wasn't expecting the level of preparation Marcus had invested in this defensive position. Marcus had wired the 7th step with a simple pressure switch connected to a flashbang grenade positioned at the top of the stairs. When the intruder's weight triggered the device, the explosion of light and sound in the confined stairwell was devastating. The man tumbled backward, temporarily blinded and deafened, directly into Marcus's field of fire. 2 quick shots ended that threat permanently. Stairway clear, Marcus reported to Sarah. Stay in position. The backdoor attack came 30 seconds later. Marcus had prepared for this approach by removing the hinges from the door and replacing them with a spring-loaded mechanism that would cause the door to fall inward when forced, potentially trapping anyone trying to breach it. The tactic worked perfectly. The first attacker found himself pinned under the heavy wooden door while his partner stumbled over him. Marcus appeared in the doorway like a ghost, his suppressed rifle eliminating both men before they could extract themselves from the tangle of limbs and splintered wood. 4 down, 2 to go. The remaining attackers realized they were facing unexpected resistance. Through the broken front window, Marcus could hear urgent radio chatter as the lookout called for backup. This confirmed Marcus's assessment that they were dealing with a larger organization, not just the 6 men who had come tonight. Sarah, we have a problem. Marcus spoke quietly into his microphone. There are more of them coming. We need to end this quickly and get out of here. The tactical situation was about to become much more complicated. Marcus had planned for the immediate assault team, but if reinforcements arrived, his ability to control the battlefield would diminish rapidly. He needed to eliminate the remaining threats and extract Sarah before the odds turned against them. Marcus moved through his own house with the fluid precision of a predator. Every piece of furniture, every sight line, every potential cover point had been memorized and planned. He was no longer Marcus, the suburban neighbor. He was Petty Officer Marcus Thompson, Navy SEAL, operating in what military planners called a target-rich environment. The fifth attacker had taken cover behind Sarah's car in the driveway, using the vehicle as a shield while he provided overwatch for the assault team. When he realized his teammates weren't responding to radio calls, he began moving toward the house to investigate. This was the mistake Marcus had been waiting for. Using the basement exit Marcus had prepared as an alternate route, he emerged behind the man's position and ended the threat with surgical precision. The lookout never knew what hit him. Only one attacker remained, the team leader who had stayed with the vehicles. Marcus could see him through his scope, talking rapidly on a cell phone while scanning the house with binoculars. Clearly, this man was calling for backup and trying to assess what had gone wrong with his carefully planned operation. Marcus faced a critical decision. He could eliminate the final target easily from his current position, but the man's cell phone conversation meant reinforcements were already on the way. Every minute they spent in the house increased the danger. They needed to leave immediately. "Sarah, it's time to go," Marcus said into his microphone. "Move to the back bedroom window like we practiced." Sarah had been fighting panic for the past 10 minutes, listening to gunfire and explosions while trying to trust that Marcus would keep her alive. When she heard his voice calling for extraction, she felt a mixture of relief and terror. Relief that the immediate threat was over, but terror at the realization that they were now fugitives. Following Marcus's instructions, Sarah opened the back bedroom window and used the rope ladder he had positioned there during their preparation. The drop to the ground was only 8 feet, but in her state of adrenaline-fueled fear, it felt like jumping off a building. Marcus met her in the backyard, carrying a military-style pack and wearing tactical gear that made him look like a completely different person. The gentle neighbor who had offered to watch her house was gone, replaced by a hardened warrior who had just killed 5 men with clinical efficiency. "We have maybe 10 minutes before backup arrives," Marcus told her as they moved quickly through the darkness between houses. "I've prepared a safe house, but we need to get there without being seen." They moved through the suburban neighborhood like ghosts, using techniques Marcus had learned in Afghanistan for moving through hostile territory. Sarah struggled to keep up with his pace and stealth, but her fear provided motivation. Behind them, sirens were beginning to converge on Maple Street. The safe house turned out to be a storage facility on the other side of town where Marcus had rented a unit under a false name. Inside the climate-controlled space, he had stockpiled enough supplies to survive for weeks if necessary. Food, water, medical supplies, ammunition, and, most importantly, multiple sets of identification documents and cash. "How long have you been planning this?" Sarah asked as she surveyed the preparations. "Since the first night they tried to break into your house," Marcus replied. "I knew this situation wouldn't end with them just giving up and walking away." Sarah sat down heavily on a folding chair, the full weight of what had just happened finally hitting her. "Marcus, you killed 5 people tonight. Because of me. Because of money I didn't even know existed." Marcus knelt in front of her, his voice gentle but firm. "Sarah, I killed 5 people who came to your house tonight to murder you. They weren't there to negotiate or collect a debt. They were there to take the money and eliminate the only witness who could connect them to David's stolen funds." He showed her a cell phone he had taken from one of the attackers. The text messages on the device made their intentions clear. Clean up all loose ends. No witnesses. There had never been any possibility of Sarah surviving a negotiated exchange. "But what happens now?" Sarah asked. "We can't go back to our normal lives. The police will want to question us. These people's friends will come looking for revenge." Marcus had been thinking about this problem since the moment he decided to help Sarah. There were really only 2 options: run forever or eliminate the threat completely. "Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. How much do you trust me? After tonight?" "Completely. You saved my life." "Then, I'm going to tell you about a third option. But It's going to require you to let me handle this situation the way I handled problems overseas. Marcus explained that David's operation wasn't just about stolen money. The criminal organization behind it was responsible for drug trafficking, human trafficking, and multiple murders across several states. They had been operating for years, protected by corruption and fear. Taking out the assault team tonight had only eliminated the immediate threat. The larger organization would send more people. But if the organization itself ceased to exist, Marcus continued, there would be no one left to come after you. Sarah understood what he was suggesting. Marcus wasn't just offering to protect her from this specific threat. He was offering to eliminate the entire criminal network that had destroyed her life. That sounds like war, Sarah said quietly. It is war, Marcus confirmed. The question is whether we're going to fight it on our terms or theirs. Over the next hour, Marcus laid out detailed intelligence he had been gathering about the criminal organization. Using contacts from his military service and techniques learned in special operations, he had identified key figures, locations, and vulnerabilities in their operation. What he was proposing wasn't random violence. It was a precision military operation designed to systematically dismantle an enemy network. This isn't just about you anymore, Sarah, Marcus explained. This organization has hurt a lot of innocent people. They're going to continue hurting people until someone stops them. The legal system has been trying for years and failing because they're too well protected and too careful. Sarah looked at the photographs and documents Marcus had compiled. Names, faces, addresses, business fronts. It was a comprehensive intelligence package that revealed the scope of the criminal enterprise that had targeted her. These weren't just street criminals. They were sophisticated operators with legitimate businesses, political connections, and enough resources to operate with near impunity. How many people would we be talking about? She asked. 12 key figures. Take them out, and the organization collapses. The foot soldiers scatter or get absorbed by other groups, but the specific threat to you disappears. Marcus could see Sarah struggling with the moral implications of what he was suggesting. She had dedicated her life to saving people, not killing them. But she was also intelligent enough to understand that sometimes violence was the only way to stop greater violence. If I say yes to this, Sarah said finally, what would my role be? Intelligence gathering. Medical support if needed. Most importantly, you help me plan operations that minimize casualties among innocent people. Your medical background and your understanding of how normal people think and behave would be invaluable. Sarah realized that Marcus was offering her a partnership, not just protection. He could probably accomplish his mission alone, but he was giving her the opportunity to actively participate in ending the threat that had destroyed her peaceful life. The decision Sarah faced was not just about her own survival. It was about what kind of person she wanted to be. She could remain a victim, always looking over her shoulder, always afraid that someday the violence would return. Or she could become something else entirely. How long would this take? She asked. 3 weeks, maybe 4. But when it's over, it's really over. You get your life back. And a lot of other innocent people get their lives back too. Sarah stood up and walked to the storage unit's small window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, the people who had tried to kill her tonight were regrouping and planning their next move. Somewhere out there, other victims were living in fear of the same organization. She could run and hope they never found her, or she could fight back. When she turned around, Marcus saw that something fundamental had changed in her expression. The frightened nurse who had been hiding in her house for weeks was gone, replaced by someone who had made a decision to stop being afraid. When do we start? Sarah asked. Marcus smiled, recognizing the transformation he had seen in combat veterans who decided to take control of their situation instead of simply surviving it. Sarah had just chosen to become a warrior. The war against the criminal organization began at dawn the next morning. Marcus had spent the night analyzing intelligence while Sarah processed the transformation from victim to active participant in her own survival. By sunrise, they had identified their first target, Vincent Carrera, the organization's money laundering specialist who operated out of a luxury car dealership downtown. Marcus explained their tactical approach over coffee and military rations in the storage facility. We're not going in guns blazing like some action movie. This is precision work. Gather intelligence, identify vulnerabilities, strike quickly, and disappear before anyone knows what happened. Sarah's first assignment was reconnaissance. Using her medical background as cover, she would visit local hospitals and clinics where the organization's victims had been treated, gathering information about the network's activities and identifying patterns that could reveal additional targets. People trust medical professionals, Marcus explained. You can ask questions and get answers that would make others suspicious. Over the next 3 days, Sarah discovered the true scope of the organization's activities. Emergency room records revealed a pattern of injuries consistent with human trafficking operations. Drug overdoses clustered around specific neighborhoods suggested distribution networks. Missing person reports created a map of the organization's recruitment activities. Meanwhile, Marcus conducted his own surveillance of the key figures he had identified. Vincent Carrera maintained a routine that made him vulnerable. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, he stayed late at the dealership to conduct business that never appeared in official records. He met with various people in his private office, transactions that Marcus suspected involved converting drug money into legitimate assets. Thursday night, Marcus told Sarah as they reviewed their intelligence. Carrera will be alone in his office between 8 and 10 p.m. Security guard makes rounds every hour, but there's a 15-minute window where the back entrance is unmonitored. Sarah had been studying the building's layout and employee schedules. What about cameras? I'll handle the security system. Your job is to make sure we know exactly who's in the building and when they leave. The operation required Sarah to overcome fears she had never imagined facing. Dressed as a potential car buyer, she visited the dealership that afternoon and engaged Vincent Carrera in conversation about financing options. He was a smooth-talking man in his 50s who treated her with the casual charm of someone accustomed to manipulating people. I'll need to think about the numbers, Sarah told him, playing the role of an indecisive customer. Maybe I could come back Thursday evening when it's less busy? Carrera agreed, never suspecting that the nervous woman asking about monthly payments was actually gathering intelligence for a military operation. Sarah left the dealership with detailed knowledge of the building's interior layout and Carrera's personal habits. Thursday evening arrived with unseasonable rain that provided additional cover for their approach. Marcus had disabled the building's security cameras with a device that looped previous footage, creating the illusion of normal activity while they operated unseen. Sarah positioned herself across the street with a radio and binoculars, monitoring the approaches to the building while Marcus entered through the rear service entrance. Her heart pounded as she watched Marcus disappear into the shadows, knowing that the man who had become her protector was about to commit murder on her behalf. Marcus moved through the darkened dealership with practiced silence. The building's layout was exactly as Sarah had described, and Carrera was in his office reviewing documents that Marcus suspected contained evidence of money laundering operations worth millions of dollars. The confrontation lasted less than 3 minutes. Marcus entered Carrera's office during the security guard's patrol, identified himself as a representative of people Carrera had wronged, and gave the man an opportunity to provide information about the organization's leadership in exchange for a quick death. Carrera tried to negotiate, then to threaten, then to beg. In the end, he provided names, addresses, and details about upcoming operations before Marcus ended his life with the same clinical efficiency he had shown in Sarah's house. Package delivered. Marcus reported to Sarah through their radio connection as he exited the building carrying a briefcase full of documents from Carrera's office. Sarah felt sick as she watched Marcus emerge from the building, knowing that a human being had just died because of decisions she had made. But she also felt something else, a sense of justice being served, and a step toward freedom from the fear that had controlled her life. The documents Marcus retrieved from Carrera's office were more valuable than they had hoped. Financial records revealed the organization's entire money laundering network, including bank accounts, real estate holdings, and business fronts across 3 states. Personnel files contained photographs and addresses for operatives they had not previously identified. This is a gold mine, Marcus told Sarah as they reviewed the intelligence back at their safe house. We can roll up their entire financial operation if we move quickly. The next target was Margaret Chun, a seemingly legitimate banker who processed the organization's transactions through a network of shell companies. Unlike Carrera, Chun was paranoid about security and rarely followed predictable routines. Marcus would need to be more creative. Sarah suggested using her nursing background to create an approach vector. Chin's elderly mother was a patient at the assisted living facility where Sarah had worked before moving to Cedar Falls. A concerned visit from a former healthcare worker would provide natural cover for reconnaissance. The approach worked perfectly. Sarah spent an afternoon with Mrs. Chun, learning about her daughter's schedule, security arrangements, and personal vulnerabilities. Margaret Chun was devoted to her mother, but terrified of exposing her to the violence that surrounded her illegal activities. She visits every Sunday afternoon, Sarah reported to Marcus. Always alone, always nervous, always checks her car for tracking devices before leaving. Marcus decided to intercept Chun during one of these visits, using the assisted living facility's parking garage as an ambush site. The location provided cover from surveillance while ensuring no innocent bystanders would be endangered. Sunday afternoon found Marcus waiting in the parking garage, while Sarah maintained overwatch from the facility's lobby. When Chun arrived for her weekly visit, she followed the same security procedures Sarah had observed, checking her car, scanning for followers, using her phone to confirm with someone that she had arrived safely. Marcus approached her as she was entering the elevator, using the confined space to neutralize her quickly and quietly. Chun was carrying encrypted files on a tablet device, financial records that revealed the organization's money laundering operations in detail. 2 down, Marcus reported as they regrouped that evening. 10 to go. The systematic elimination of key figures began to have noticeable effects on the organization's operations. Drug shipments were intercepted by law enforcement after anonymous tips provided exact locations and timing. Bank accounts were frozen when financial crimes investigators received detailed evidence of money laundering activities. Lower-level operatives began disappearing as they realized their protection was failing. Marcus had learned in military operations that disrupting an enemy's command structure was more effective than engaging their foot soldiers. By eliminating the organization's decision-makers and operational specialists, he was causing the entire network to collapse from within. Sarah's role evolved as their campaign continued. Her medical training proved invaluable for treating injuries Marcus sustained during operations, but, more importantly, her analytical mind helped identify connections and patterns that his military background might miss. The next 3 targets need to be taken simultaneously, Sarah suggested as they planned their 4th week of operations. If any of them realize what's happening, they'll warn the others and change their security arrangements. Marcus agreed. The remaining figures included the organization's weapons supplier, their human trafficking coordinator, and their political protection, a corrupt county sheriff who had been taking payments to ignore their activities. Eliminating all 3 in a single coordinated strike would prevent the survivors from adapting their defenses. The triple operation required more resources than Marcus could deploy alone. He reached out to former military colleagues who had struggled with civilian life. Men who understood the value of direct action against targets the legal system couldn't touch. Sarah found herself coordinating with a team of retired Special Forces operators who had volunteered to help end a criminal organization that had been operating with impunity for too long. The weapons supplier fell first, eliminated during what appeared to be a robbery at his warehouse that left no witnesses and no evidence. The human trafficking coordinator died in a car accident that was actually a precisely planned collision on a rural highway. The corrupt sheriff suffered a heart attack in his office that was actually induced by an untraceable injection administered by Sarah herself. 3 for 3, Sarah reported as they monitored news coverage of the deaths. No connections being made, no increased security for the remaining targets. With 9 key figures eliminated, the criminal organization was in chaos. Their operations were failing, their money was frozen or confiscated, and their remaining leadership was fighting among themselves. Marcus could have ended his campaign there and achieved his objective of protecting Sarah, but she convinced him to finish what they had started. "These people destroyed my life and the lives of hundreds of others," Sarah said as they planned their final operations. "We owe it to all their victims to make sure this organization can never hurt anyone again." The last 3 targets were the most dangerous. The organization's founder and his 2 lieutenants who had managed to avoid law enforcement for over a decade. They were experienced, paranoid, and heavily protected. Marcus would need to use every skill he had learned in military service to reach them. The final operation took place at a remote compound outside the city where the organization's leadership had gone into hiding. Marcus and his recruited team conducted a full military assault, using night vision, suppressed weapons, and coordinated tactics to overwhelm the site's defenses. Sarah coordinated the operation from a mobile command post, monitoring police radio frequencies and providing real-time intelligence to the assault team. When the shooting ended, the criminal organization that had terrorized her and countless others ceased to exist. In the aftermath, Sarah and Marcus faced a choice about their future. They could disappear separately, using new identities to start fresh in different parts of the country. Or they could build a new life together, two people who had been forged into something stronger through shared violence and mutual trust. "I can't go back to being just a nurse," Sarah admitted as they prepared to leave their safe house for the last time. "After everything we've done, everything we've seen, I need my life to mean more than it did before." Marcus understood. Combat changed people in ways that couldn't be undone. Sarah had discovered capabilities she never knew she possessed, and had taken actions she could never have imagined before this ordeal began. "There are other organizations like this one," Marcus said. "Other victims who need help the legal system can't provide." 6 months later, Sarah Martinez and Marcus Thompson were operating a private security consulting firm that specialized in protecting witnesses and victims of organized crime. Their methods were unconventional, and their success rate was perfect. Law enforcement agencies occasionally received anonymous intelligence packages that led to major arrests, and criminal organizations occasionally discovered that their key personnel had developed a habit of dying in untraceable accidents. Sarah had found her calling in a profession that combined her desire to help people with the tactical skills Marcus had taught her. Marcus had found a purpose that used his military training to protect innocent people instead of serving political objectives. Together, they had created something that was part business partnership, part warrior bond, and part love story. The quiet suburbs of Cedar Falls had given Sarah the peace she was looking for, just not in the way she had expected. Sometimes peace had to be won through war, and sometimes protecting innocence required the willingness to embrace violence. Sarah had learned that she was capable of both, and with Marcus beside her, she was ready to use those capabilities to help others find their own version of peace. Their story had begun with Sarah as a victim fleeing from violence, but it ended with her as a protector who understood that sometimes the only way to stop evil people was to be more dangerous than they were. The woman who had once hidden behind locked doors was now someone who kicked down doors when innocent people needed help. And the retired Navy SEAL who had tried to escape his violent past had found a way to use that past to build something better. Together, they had transformed from ordinary neighbors into something extraordinary. Two people who had chosen to stand between predators and their prey, no matter what the cost.